for those of the viewers who are tuning in just right now, Frank and I were just having a conversation about how transformation has become such a buzzword in therapy and coaching industry, where it almost sets an expectation. But before we go all of this, we'd like to talk about all and tackle some of the questions that first-time clients who are looking for a psychotherapist or who are looking for somebody to speak with, they have in their mind. And we wanted to address some of these questions together with Frank, and as a way also to introduce Frank as one of the new associates at Light on Wellness. We've been working with Frank together for about a month now, starting March 1st, I believe. So it's actually more. Now we're at the end of April. So 2 months we've been collaborating, and
Is it really 2 months?
It really, it has been. It's been 2 months. Wow. Okay.
Wow.
So if anything, this video, this introduction is late. So I apologize for that, but we wanted to bring it out and officially introduce Frank Marchesi, or am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah. Marchesi, yeah.
Marchesi.
Close, yeah.
Cool. So Frank is a graduate of a 5-year training program called Gestalt in Toronto, Ontario. And Frank has been already in practice for about, how long have you, when was the last time you saw your very first client?
I think 2019, I think. Yeah, so about 2.5 years, 3 years.
2.5 years.
I don't know exact, but
yeah.
I think 2019.
Yeah, so it is safe for us to say that Frank has been in practice for 2 years. Yep.
2 years.
2 years. Frank is registered with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario, and you're working with various supervisors, group supervision. So there's a lot of support that is surrounding your practice right now.
True. Yeah. Although I am qualifying, I'm not fully registered at the moment, but which is just on the process to,
Which just means that you are covered by the majority of benefit plans, but all it means is that you're working under supervision.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Towards
exactly.
a full license. Perfect. Okay. All right. So Frank, one of the questions that usually gets asked is, what is Gestalt therapy? How is Gestalt approach different, and how would a person who is in Gestalt therapy know that they are experiencing Gestalt therapy?
Oh my, okay. I've always kind of run into and heard so many of my teachers say that, like, there are as many Gestalt therapy as there are Gestalt therapists, because everybody has their own way that they interpret and go about doing things. It's very, I think, since it is so, I guess, in the moment, between people, very person-centered, there's a lot of opportunity for each person to make Gestalt their own as a therapist. But if I were to say, I guess, from my own perspective, I would say that it's an approach that aims to bring more of the, I guess, human quality to therapy, to relationships, right? If it's a way of living, is to bring in a way of not just recognizing the person and their role and what they do or their value, but recognizing that they are actually a person. And in this moment, we are living here together, going through a time. Right now, it's the time of lockdown and COVID, and that's another element that gets layered on top of it. But it's about coming back to being a human being just for a little bit, for like an hour, however long, right?
And allowing ourselves to be fully human within this hour, with all of our flaws, quote unquote, strength, quote unquote, weaknesses, quote unquote, just simply being.
And weakness, that's something I've been hearing a lot recently, but weakness is not really as weakness. When it's supported, it's, I guess I would call it vulnerability, which is actually more of like a strength, right?
Totally.
Right. So I mean, often it's like the client will be like, I'm in tears. I feel like I'm embarrassed, right? And it's not really something to be embarrassed about because there's just so much vital communication in that, right? Like there's a real asking for support. I don't think there's something weak in that, right?
Yeah. Beautiful. That's a beautiful reframing for a client to take away. Yeah. What is weakness, and is it really? And maybe throw the word out completely. Sounds like it's a very allowing. Yeah. And it sounds like from what you described that there's an aspect of like the here and now, which you often hear when you're hearing of Gestalt approach. It's almost like a thing like, oh, it's a here and now kind of therapy. So is that what you were describing as this aspect of the here and now?
In terms of, yeah, if I were just to, yeah, so exactly the here and now, it is very focused on the present. I mean, I see it differ from other therapy that I've studied and participated in myself, in that it's not as much fixated on like stuff that has happened in the past or stuff that will happen in the future, but Gestalt really aims to use whatever is present here in the moment, between the client and the therapist, or whatever has happened. Like for instance, a client, let's say, coming in rushed because they had let's say they're a parent and they have 2 kids and they're all over the place, and they come in and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not present because I'm doing all these other things and I'm busy. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not here right now. And I would say from a Gestalt point would be like, no, this is good. This is you. This is your life. Right?
You are here.
So you're here as a parent who's stressed out trying to make contact with me. Right? And we might explore like how that is. Right? I mean, there'll be often times where that same parent might be going to a grocery store, or people might not be as like attentive and might get a look, a certain look, or someone might not have patience for them. But here we can actually explore what's it like to be a parent who doesn't have time and somebody's trying to talk to you, right?
Yeah.
Maybe gain some, yeah.
And kind of in a way of doing that, we're also finding how we can be present with all of that. We actually are still present, even though we're rushed and all over the place.
Yeah, we're here. Yeah.
So it's anchoring us into the presence. I love that. Why Gestalt? Why did you choose to study Gestalt? Or was that a choice, or is that something that walked into your life? And how did you become Gestalt therapist?
So I got out of university, was studying a lot of philosophy, and I was just really interested in that. Realized there wasn't really much I could do in philosophy, so went into psychotherapy because it just felt like the best way to apply what was important for me about philosophy to actually working with people, right? And I also really gravitated towards the personal development parts of philosophy. All that said, I had gotten into a school of psychotherapy that was very philosophically based, and through going through my own therapy in that program, it was not really what I was looking for. And so I wanted to go in the opposite direction, which is something that wasn't as of the mind and thought and contemplation. I wanted something that was just concrete. It was here. It was emotions. It was what was said. It wasn't what maybe this happened, maybe this theory. It was just like, you're sitting here in front of me.
Wow.
and this is a very Gestalt thing, is like, oh, I noticed you turned away when I asked how you were doing, what was going on there. And there was something that was just so refreshing about
Mhm.
Gestalt, that I was just like, wow, you actually saw me in the moment. I didn't have to explain and be intricate and smart for you. It was just simple. Oh, you looked away. Oh, you saw that I looked away, right? Like,
Mm.
there's something very like settling about that. And as simple as it seems, something like that can open up so much about our relationships.
Mhm.
Anyways, I keep going into these tangents, but
It's not at all. This is fantastic. It sounds like there's something so allowing about the Gestalt approach. It's like there's nothing to hide. Like you can't hide, and then it allows us to explore what it is that we usually hide for the other time that we're not in this 1 hour.
that's the thing too, is you can hide if you want. But the thing is like being in awareness
So
of it,
you're even
right?
allowed to hide. That's awesome.
Yeah, like,
You're allowed.
the client can, like, a client or people in my personal life can be like, no, I don't want to be seen right now. And I'd be like, okay,
Mhm.
we can work with that, right? Like, I can
Awesome.
respect that. Like,
Yeah.
that's just the
Yeah.
person making space too, right? But if we do it in awareness, right? Like, that's
That's
the
the key.
thing.
Like as long as we are aware of what we're doing, it no longer is a reaction or reflecting or deflecting. It becomes a choice.
Yes. Yeah. That's the main thing. Yeah, exactly. Like, even, yeah, exactly. The responsibility part about it, like, be like choosing to respond
Mhm.
instead of like reacting,
Yeah.
I'd say is also a big part of, yeah, Gestalt, and probably a lot of other psychotherapy too. But
There's another question that kind of gets asked is whenever somebody who is familiar with Gestalt in some capacity, they usually like associated with some exercises like 2-chair exercise. There's like dialoguing with different parts. Um, is that the kind of type of Gestalt that you practice, or
mm,
if you do, what are some of the exercises that you go to, that are your favorite, that you see that work very well and you tend to use more often than others?
okay. I have been trained, I think, in both types
Mhm.
of those Gestalt. When I started the program in Toronto, we were, I think, the first like transition class moving from, I don't even really want to use these words, but like a classical Gestalt into something newer.
Mhm.
So I've seen and been through both of those changes. Both are extremely useful. But I guess without getting into it too much, because it's, yeah, probably not as helpful, but I would say from the older like 2-chair work, which is what Gestalt's also really known for.
Mhm.
I myself do use that. Sometimes it's helpful with clients where um, working with me one-on-one, like facing me, is sometimes difficult. It might be easier for them to work in their own space, right? Because there's safety in their own space. I
Yeah.
guess even online,
Mhm.
right? To not be fixated on the screen and instead turn towards something in their room and go back and forth.
Mhm.
Um, I don't always use that. I try to incorporate like I, I guess in the service of the relationship, I want to be present. So be present with the person, right? I find that that is how I'm able to support. So we might do two-chair work with me,
Mhm.
right? Like where I might say, pretend I am,
So and so.
I don't know, the guy who cut you off in traffic,
What do you
and
want to
just
say?
I won't say anything. Yeah, what do you want to say? And I just sit here and maybe I'll ask permission. Is it okay if I give response, or is it okay if I give a reaction, or if I play the part a little bit? So I might, pretend I'm the guy in traffic and just they'll talk with me, and I might say something back, and dialogue will, open up and unfold. So
Mhm.
I guess that's to talk about the old and the new and the two chair.
Yeah.
Um,
There's something that just came up for me as you were talking about this. There's another, I think, that is quite associated with Gestalt, is to finish unfinished business, like closing a Gestalt. That's as I'm learning about the Gestalt approach in depth, that's something that I've come to know. But is that one of the ways that by enabling this conversation to happen, we close or finish the unfinished business? Is that, am I understanding this correctly, or am I completely off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that. Let me think about that for a second. Yeah, it does close it, but I think it goes back to what we were saying when we were talking about like awareness and responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Responsibility, I guess, being broken into like the word of like the ability to respond, right?
Yes.
So by increasing awareness of the potential of, let's say, and not somebody and who cut you off in traffic, in a way we can come closer to reality of what the possibility might be, right? Maybe the conversation might unfold that that person wanted to go to work because they really need the money and they're stressed out, and that if we were to have that conversation, the client and the person who cut them off, they might find like, oh, we actually have something in common. We were both trying to get somewhere. And in some way, whether it's true or not, it does close something, but I guess it's not really a closing, it's a widening. Like, okay.
Oh, okay. It's a widening of perception of like, it's not about me, or maybe we are more like than, you're not against each other. Maybe you're actually in the same boat. There's a connection that can be built through that, sounds like.
Yeah, or maybe the person who cut you off is really irritable and maybe not as courteous as you, but maybe it wasn't also about you, maybe it was, like, might not have been as personal as it might have felt, right? Because
widening.
Not everyone is.
I'm loving this. This is not about closing something or letting it go necessarily, but it's about widening our awareness of possibilities of what this might mean.
Yeah, integrating.
This is awesome.
Integrating, I think, is a big part of it too.
That's very powerful stuff. And a lot of us, when we're starting therapy and when we're looking for a therapist, it's almost, these are the things that we're looking for, but we don't know what they're called. We don't even know how to ask a therapist of like, well, how will you help me to integrate or something or other? Like it's almost like we don't know what we want, and we don't know how to ask for it. And I think this conversation might help the viewer or a potential client to like really understand what it is that they might be like potentially experiencing. And that's what it's called, like integration and widening their awareness through looking at and doing these exercises. Okay.
Yeah, actually there's an exercise when we do talk about techniques, that something that I do use a lot and I do find really helpful is for exactly that, like not knowing somebody, like let's say somebody comes in with this, like just this feeling of confusion or heaviness or something that they don't know how to explain, but they feel that it's there. And it's like, what do we do, right? Like we don't have words for this. So I often find it helpful to use like imagery work, right? So in that instance where we don't know what we're working with when somebody comes in, but they know something's off, we'll be like, well, like, what is it like? Does it have a quality? Does it have a color? Does it have a feeling? Is there something that, or even something that feeling moves you? Like, does it move you in some way? Does it move you like forward or back or down, right? And so someone might say like, oh, it feels like it's pulling my head down. Yeah. And it's like, well, if you imagine that, let's say, would you imagine like a weight? And if they say yeah, it's like, oh, what is it made out of? And just keep building on the image until, working on it together, they add something, I get curious about something, eventually we paint a picture together and then look at it and be like, what do you feel now?
Yeah.
Usually something else happens.
Oh, this is phenomenal. It's almost making me think of now, once we paint that picture and have that visual of what it is that we feel, we may not necessarily need any other words or labels for it, but we create a space in between us and the feeling. And
Yes.
then there's a different relationship that gets opportunity to be created with that sensation that we've just described using these descriptors. And it gives so much freedom, because all of a sudden it's not subjective anymore. It's not I am something, is I am experiencing this thing. And it puts us into the place of curiosity with it.
Yes.
And an opportunity to develop a different relationship. So Gestalt is really sounds to me like a relationship. Like there's a relationship aspect to everything, even to our feelings. Yeah.
There is, yeah. There is. It's very important. Like even just that exercise itself is like, while it's useful to paint the picture, sometimes it's also just really important to like paint that picture together, right? To just take that time, even if it's in the beginning, to like go through that together and put the colors out on the table of, you know, what colors are you coming in with? Colors am I coming in with? And after we have something that we've kind of looked at and we're like, yeah, I understand what that is.
Yeah.
There's something about that that can allow for, I guess, the session to, I don't know, feel different, feel more supported, feel more like it has its own energy quality to it, right?
Yeah.
I think that kind of realness was always there for Gestalt. I think in the early days, or the classical or the new, I think it's always been about that relationship. The techniques and I guess the theory or the ways of working have changed, but it's always really been about meeting person to person.
Yeah. There's such power in this, I feel, because one of the basic human needs, basic human birthrights is to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted, to be, may not even necessarily be loved, but simply just to be allowed to be. And feeling like they've been seen, they've been heard, they've been accepted. When we have that check, there's something that happens within us for ourselves. And it sounds to me that this is what it's allowing for. Is for the feeling to exist and for us to be seen and heard and accepted with it.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful stuff. I think this is where this transformation happens for people sometimes. And again, I'm using this word transformation with a quote unquote because it's become such a big word. Everybody's looking for a transformation, this, transformation that. It's almost like, so we're looking for something that like a shift almost. And would you be able to maybe like give a couple of examples, or without going into too much detail, or like in very vague words without identifying anything, into what are some of the shifts that you have seen within your patients over the last 2 years of practice that you're particularly proud of, if we were allowed to even be that way there?
Yeah, something that just comes to mind, and I mean, again, like we were talking before, like it's not like this is it's not like when we talk about the shift to the transformation that it's always that way, right? It's very unique to each person, and I would say it was around knowing when they were feeling, I guess, activated, emotionally activated in response to their environment, people, and, you know, relationships. And through working together, we were able to, after a while, slow that down to just really unpack like how this happens, how like I'm using examples and it's not really
it's tough. It's tough for us to explain what we do and what potentially could a client could potentially not expect, but imagine themselves experiencing
Yeah,
without
yeah.
giving too much details. So it's almost like,
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. Yeah.
but
Thinking, how do I say it in a way that's vague enough, but also meaningful enough that like somebody could connect with what I'm saying. Um, Essentially, like really what it was when they were able to just recognize what they were feeling and how they really just felt other than themselves, and not blame themselves entirely for how they were feeling, because like we're talking, it's about the relationship, right? It's not just that they were acting a certain way, it's that they were acting a certain way with this person, right? And what was that about? You know, how is it that this person is with them, and how does that activate something in them, maybe not as resource, right? So working together, we were able to find a resource, find support for that part of themselves or that place of themselves that's just, when they step into that environment, they become someone different and they're embarrassed about that. So they were able to put up some boundaries and pace and notice and be honest with this person. And while it didn't necessarily go like, you know, picture perfect, they said they walked away from that saying they felt like they were like proud of themselves. And also feeling, I think, the loss of not being able to change this other person, but at least they know now, right? And now thinking like, what can I do now, right? Feeling like, okay, I can't change them. Okay, maybe do something different, which I think that's
I think that's it. I think this is what we kind of all want. And when it kind of speaks to what we do want when we are looking for the boundaries, how to impose them, where the boundary is, how to install it, how to speak to it in a loving and self-compassionate way, and a compassionate way towards the relationship and another person within it, maintain the boundaries and feel proud rather than scared. A lot of us are scared of putting up and maintaining boundaries because of what it might mean and what losses might follow. We associate putting up a boundary with losing something. But here is like being brave to lose and not to let go of it, but let something be instead, and feeling empowered within themselves.
Yeah, so well said. Yeah.
I'm imagining as part of training for a lot of therapists, the training itself involves a lot of therapy and the modalities being received, right? Like we practice what we practice on others, on ourselves first. So what are some of the modalities, or what are some of the personal transformations that you have, again that word, that you have experienced for yourself as a result of receiving this? Like for you to be in a client's chair, what would a client in the client's chair experience like, and how can you relate to that by receiving?
Yeah, okay, in the client's chair. So from coming in wanting to just like fix myself, change completely, you know, I've been so good at changing myself so many times, and I gotta live this way, live that way, live this way, and not really being sure what was the best way. Being in Gestalt, it really helped me to start to, I guess, contact a part of myself, to get in touch with a part of myself that I wasn't always aware of, and I didn't really always value because it wasn't as like I guess intricate and intellectual and smart sounding, but it was just basically who I was, right? Like part of that is like through the work of like embodiment work, like working with the body to actually like feel that I have a body, and in my body I have emotions. Before I was just always living in my head and in thoughts and trying to be like impressive,
figuring things
make
out,
something worthwhile and be valuable. Not that has gone away, right? That's always still a part of me, but I now, I think the biggest takeaway is, I would say feeling that I have a body.
Feeling that
I don't know how that will land with people or with you, but
Whoa,
feeling
it's
like
landing like, yeah.
I'm
We,
physically in this space. I physically exist. I physically exist with people. There's something, how as I say it, that's kind of uh, makes me feel kind of some emotional,
Mhm.
I guess, sadness, but not sadness. I guess it's like gratitude. It's such
Gratitude.
a beautiful moment when
Yeah.
I have felt that with people, right? Like I'm physically here and you're physically there, even though we're on a screen, but like, oh, this is
Coexisting.
real.
Yeah.
This is real life. Yeah.
It's almost like it sounds like there is a groundedness in it that brings us back to dissociations that usually happen when we are responding to something from a traumatized place. Right? We very quickly
Yeah.
go to the not here and not now into this other place. So this there
Mm-hmm.
is the safety that gets created in the Gestalt therapy where it's calling the dissociated parts back, and then you get to
Mm-hmm.
find that safety in your body and feel in your body again,
Yeah.
in your
Like
body
it's both
again.
harder. It's both harder to live from this place, but also
Yeah.
immensely more rewarding and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
I found like that's where
It is.
uh, it's it for one. I guess it's
Mm-hmm.
harder to really feel things all the
Mm-hmm.
time. Life is difficult, but also when things are good, they're also so much better because of that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this. Oh, it's giving me shivers. So I'm in here in this experience that you're describing. It almost makes me feel like Gestalt is inherently a trauma-informed modality. It's not just trauma-informed. It can be very, very inducing to the healing of the trauma because it gently, safely calls back the parts of us that forgot how to coexist with the other parts of us because they've been denied or hurt
Yes.
or shunned, shamed away. And whenever we are feeling like we're not in our body and somewhere else, we are really walking heads sometimes, responding and
Yeah.
reacting
Yes.
to the
Yeah.
world and to the traumas and to the triggers, and not really being to the here and now. So like this is a beautiful learning for me. I had no idea that the Gestalt is itself a it itself is very safe. There's so much safety in this, and safety is one thing that we want to create when we're working with anybody with trauma.
Yeah.
It's
Like
allowing you to
safety and then freedom when it's safe.
and
Yeah.
freedom to exist and just and be and just exploring all of that within the realms of therapy and the safety of therapies. I think
Yeah.
it's
With
very
someone who
powerful. I
sits
think
across from you and cares, and part of
cares.
caring is to also give
Yeah.
uh, careful but also authentic feedback, right?
Yeah.
About what it's like when somebody else is their authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
In a
Allowing for
way,
authenticity in a safe way where it's
yeah,
up where you're allowed, you're free.
yeah, yeah.
Love it. All right. Well, wow. I've learned so much. I have learned so much from speaking with you and asking all these questions. And I'm really, really hoping that whoever is tuned into this and listened to this and has had any questions about what Gestalt is, how does it work, what to expect, and what are some of the things that we can expect to feel or do, or the work that can happen. I hope that that answered a lot of questions. And I am maybe some of the logistic stuff. If Frank, you are taking on patients right now, you are taking on new clients, you're open, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We
Yeah.
and you okay? Do you foresee yourself being um, uh, closing into taking on new patients anytime soon, or are you welcoming
Not.
into your practice?
Yeah, I'm welcoming. Yeah,
Very good.
welcoming.
Okay. Okay. So if anybody's interested, we have a lot of information in the comment section of this video. Go to the links there. And Frank, you're offering half-hour free consultations for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who has any further questions or it wants to experience this other than observing two therapists talking about Gestalt and what to
Yeah.
expect, and they want to see, how can you help me? Like, could I benefit from working with you? They're welcome to book a half-hour consults.
I will say though about half-hour consults, you don't really get to explore Gestalt or probably
No.
any modality all that well, but it would be an opportunity for anyone who's like curious or on the fence or hesitant or just really wants to check in with someone or with me about therapy and going back and forth. But to really get into like the embodied here and now work, yeah,
we're setting an expectation that that's not going to happen in the first half hour.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. It's very important.
We might talk about it, but the experience, the
experience happens in the through the work. Maybe not even in the first session. Maybe not even a third. Maybe not even in a fourth. But we're creating a possibility to happen.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Okay. Well, it was such a pleasure speaking with you and meeting up with you for this hour. And I am hoping that this is useful. I'm hoping that this answers a lot of questions and educates and lands in the hearts of people who may have been curious about Gestalt, may have been curious about emotion exploration and exploring themselves, and especially have been wondering about that. What is it, that authenticity piece, and how do I live authentically? Maybe this is an opportunity to explore that idea further with you, or with any Gestalt therapist, really. But you were specifically, in the way that you're speaking about this, like it lands very softly, and it makes me want to work with you. So thank you for what you do. And like we're just, if anybody has any questions, comments below, and reach out to any one of us, and we'll be happy to support you further. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for answering all of these questions and making yourself present to these and answering them. And we will tune in later.
All right. Thanks a lot, Julia. It was really nice talking with you and having a chance to just explore. And yeah, it was nice. Thank you.
Good. Beautiful.